While I can't say no to some good comic books and cartoons, I'm also an avid reader of the classics. And since I'm a big sci-fi comic book nerd, well, it shouldn't come too much of a shock that one of my favorite authors is Jules Verne. Those of you who never heard of Jules Verne or who have heard of him are probably so in the context of him being a sci-fi pioneer, coming up with ideas decades, if not centuries, before they became commonplace. In fact, he's often thought of as one of the world's greatest inventors and put in the same category as people like Einstein or Leonardo da Vinci as far as great minds that could see past their time. He just happened to be an author, and his medium was the written word, as opposed to physically building things the way Doc Brown did in Back to the Future. But an inventor he is nonetheless. You've probably heard of Captain Nemo and the Nautilus. You may not be as familiar with, or maybe you've seen Back to the Future 3 when Doc Brown talks about from the Earth to the Moon and Jules Verne's idea of a rocket blasting through the atmosphere, although it wasn't quite a rocket as much as it was a giant bullet that people could ride in that was fired from an equally oversized giant cannon. Hey, what can we say? People had just finished the Civil War, and cannons and war were kind of trendy. So was exploration, and so were marvelous new inventions like the hot air balloon, which Jules Verne expanded into a much larger vehicle in a trip across Africa in the Victoria. Although nothing beats any airship for Verne as far as size, as you will the Albatross, which you can see very similar to Leonardo da Vinci's concept for a helicopter, and that's why Verne is often thought of like this. I mean, there's tons of other things that he invented that people don't talk about, like the stun gun or skywriting, fax machines, video conferencing. All of this came from Jules Verne. He was the first person to write about it. But one thing he doesn't get as much credit for is the spin-off, or maybe more broadly, the shared universe, where characters from different IP can come together and have one existing universe. A lot of people look at World's Fair Comics as the first time we saw Batman and Superman on a cover together. This really established DC as a shared universe, and nowadays people look at every cartoon ever or every sitcom ever. There's all sorts of theories about them being shared universes. And of course, mainstream pop culture knows this probably most from the Marvel Universe, where characters who had their own movie were able to come together. But Verne had a character who also did this. And if you're not sure who you're looking at here, this is the good Captain Nemo, although that's the Disney version. I kind of prefer this version, not necessarily the film version of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The movie was okay, but the book, the comic book by Alan Moore, is amazing, and one of the best things is he nails Nemo. This is what Nemo should look like. He should be Indian with, the kind of soldier look. Most people know Captain Nemo from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is, one of Jules Verne's most popular novels, probably that, Journey to the Center of the Earth, the ones kind of taught in schools. But this was not the only Nemo adventure. And I'm not talking about kind of the modern, the continuations of like what could have happened to Captain Nemo, or even there's a kid series about Captain Nemo as a teenager. All right, major spoiler alert here for a book that's going to be 200 years old in a couple decades. So 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. For those of you who may never have read it, it actually refers to the distance covered, not depth. So 20,000 leagues is, you follow this map here, that's where they go. It's not 20,000 leagues down. It's across. It's a world exploration inside of a submarine, and it's an awesome, awesome, fun adventure. Likewise, a few years later, Verne published The Mysterious Island, and not to be confused with the Dwayne Johnson movie, although the Dwayne Johnson movie is sort of based on this, but not really. I mean, okay, well, it is a bunch of people walking around an island, but all right, let's talk about that the better. What happens in the book is a group of Civil War prisoners from the North, escape from a southern prison in a balloon. Everyone goes in balloons and burn stuff. And they wind up landing on a mysterious island, which they name Lincoln Island, because they're Northern Civil War soldiers. Well, they have their fun, marching around the island and looking for King Kong and all that. And did I mention monkey butlers? There are monkey butlers. Probably the reason you should read this book most of all. All right, I'm just saying. All right, well, it couldn't be called The Mysterious Island if it wasn't mysterious. And mysterious it is. weird stuff starts happening. Weird stuff with the weather, weird stuff with the animals, weird stuff with the monkey butlers, and even supplies that they need mysteriously wash up, or rather appear on shore. So yeah, it's definitely one of those like, okay, something else is going on here. And what really turns the tide is when a message in a bottle shows up that washes up on shore. And it's actually from someone that's just a few islands over. And it turns out that it's a character from an entirely different Jules Verne book.
It's an entirely different kind of flying.
While sometimes called the Castaways, it's also known as the Children of Captain Grant. And with dual titles like this, you'd be really shocked to find out that the book is actually about the children of Captain Grant who become castaways. So yes, your typical action-adventure story where your ship gets destroyed at sea and the contents of said ship in human form wind up on a desert island. But of course, it being a Jules Verne novel, fun and chaos and craziness doth ensue, and well, it's a fun read. It's one of the lesser-known books of Verne's canon, but it's important because in the course of the book, when, of course, Captain Grant's children, being children, need to be rescued, because one can't leave children on an island forever, or they would become Peter Pan. So, while the children are rescued, someone has to be left behind, and that person is Tom, who's a convict, and therefore a bad apple. And it's found that for the safety of everyone, let's just say he's left behind. So remember that message in a bottle I mentioned that shows up on the mysterious island? Well, that is a letter from Tom. So Tom shows up being rescued by the other castaways, and it becomes the first ever crossover. Now back to the mysterious island, Tom now being a member, well, mysterious things keep coming, and it doesn't stop. And it turns out, now here's where we're getting into our spoiler alert territory, that the mastermind behind all the strange things happening on the island, the message in the bottle, getting Tom rescued from the other nearby island, well, it was all from, dun dun dun, Captain Nemo! Yes, it turned out that after 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 20,000, did I say 2? 20,000, let's add 18 to that. Well, Nemo steered the Nautilus to this island, and this is the birth of the very first secret origin. We've had stories of heroes before, Robin Hood and Ivanhoe. Well, actually, Robin is in Ivanhoe, but you get the point. Well, this is the first time that a character who, in some ways, is considered a supervillain, gives his origin, tells his backstory, and it happens in a different book, if you will, a different issue, a different time than his original appearance. So here we have an established character that we are now revisiting from a different book and learning about his past and how he came to be, something we never learned in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He's not two-dimensional, but he's not really fleshed out. It's why, if, again, you're a fan of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic series, I guess the movie too, Nemo plays a big part in this, and he's shown as an Indian, a Sikh. And it's because he fought in the Indian Mutiny. You remember that line from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? So yes, the British never forget the Mutiny of 1857. So yes, he played a part in that, and after it didn't go through, he basically gave up and realized, that he gave up on all nationalities and took to the sea and decided he was going to be a citizen of the sea. He was so devastated by the mutiny not happening. So the next time you see, a wizard showing up in a superhero movie about a boy bitten by a spider, or all of the Avengers showing up together, this concept of a shared universe didn't happen in comic books. It started with Jules Verne and his giant cannon. Wait a minute. That didn't even sound right. Futurama totally stole this concept, too.
What if I refuse?
Then you'll be fired.
Fine.
Out of a cannon into the sun.
All right, well, giant moon cannon aside, I've always thought it was so cool that Jules Verne did a lot more than just come up with the idea for the submarine. He created the idea of a shared universe, and it's something as comic book movie fans we really appreciate. What do you think of this video? You ever knew Jules Verne was the creator of continuity? Let me know. What's your favorite Jules Verne book? Have you ever read any? If you haven't, what would you like to read? You a fan of his movies? Share this video, like it, subscribe, all that stuff, ring the bell. It helps tell YouTube to share it with more people. Thanks for supporting the algorithm, and I'll see you guys next time.